David, I'm starting to see headlines that Joe Biden's approval rating is collapsing. Is this true? So first, let's answer the question about the approval rating. Then let's talk about what's actually going on. If you look at 538, Joe Biden's approval has only dropped like within the margin of error. When I looked most recently, Joe Biden's approval on an average of approval ratings went from 53 to 51.5. That's a really, really small change to say it's statistically significant yet. But let's imagine that it's true that Joe Biden's approval is declining a little bit. I think there's a couple things to think about. First of all, it might be more important to look at disapproval than approval. On disapproval, Joe Biden's disapproval has gone up from an average of 36 to an average of 43. My guess is that that's right wingers who have shifted from having no real opinion to saying they don't like what Joe Biden is doing, probably in part because of the propaganda, particularly around vaccines and COVID and masks, that has been spreading among right-wing media circles. But I think in this case, it's a little more important to zoom out. It's very common that a normal president, not Trump, a normal president comes in with a relatively high or higher approval rating. And then over time, their approval begins to erode and their disapproval starts to go up. Why is this? A lot of this disapproval stuff is based on, has the president done anything that you don't like? And even if you've liked a bunch of stuff Joe Biden has done, there will be some people where in February Biden does something they don't like. They now disapprove and they're not going back. And then in March, Joe Biden does something different that another little cohort doesn't like. And now they disapprove and they never go back. So the erosion of approval throughout a presidency is relatively common. With Donald Trump, he actually left office with the lowest approval of his presidency. I think it was 29%, according to, I think it was Gallup. So that's relatively atypical. Also atypical would be like, for example, George W. Bush after 9/11 had like 80 something percent approval. That was a unique sort of circumstance that explained that. So it's not particularly concerning. I think that this gets me back to Biden needs a major accomplishment this calendar year. Another major accomplishment. The vaccine rollout has been huge. Now the problem is too many people don't want the vaccine. Getting COVID stimulus done within a couple of months, that was huge. We're now in the second part of the year. We're in the third quarter. We're going to be in the fourth quarter before you know it. Biden has to get something else done. If it's the infrastructure deal, that could be useful. That could actually lead to a couple points of approval increasing. But I think that this is all pointing to a very interesting 2022 cycle. Also, in support of Democrats in 2022, it's also really important that Joe Biden gets something else done. And then we'll see what happens as far as the approval rating is concerned. But so far, everything is pretty typical. Slight erosion of approval, but it's time for Joe to get something else done. We've got a great bonus show for you today. Don't miss it. Sign up at joinpacman.com. We'll have Farron Cousins for a few days and also Jesse Dollemore for a few days, replacing me on upcoming shows. I will then be back. It's going to be incredible. Please be nice to them, guys. Please be nice to them. I would appreciate that.